And thank you everyone for joining us today. Recently, we've been talking about reasons that employers may be having a hard time finding employees, considering our still notable unemployment rate and the strides the state has made on the path to reopening and recovering from this pandemic-related recession. From challenges related to finding reliable childcare, concerns over personal health amidst an ongoing pandemic, to increased competition for jobs among others with similar skill sets, and a growing demand for higher wages, there are many factors that add up to a tight labor market. And that's something that we're seeing unfold not just in Oregon, but across the nation. The increasing spread of COVID-19 has led to recently announced increased county risk levels, and this will impact Oregonians in many different ways. It may result in more people seeking benefits as their livelihoods are impacted. And the Employment Department is watching the situation very closely, and we're prepared to handle any increase in benefit claims or customer questions about their benefits. We're continually seeking process improvements and finding better ways to serve Oregonians. We previously shared the large increase in initial claim filings that we saw recently as many people reached the 1-year anniversary of initially seeking benefits. We're rapidly working through those, and despite it being a very significant increase in claims, we're already back to completing the initial processing of most claims within 7 days, and that time frame continues to shrink. 160 employees we've recently hired to help people get their benefits mean even more of our more experienced staff are able to address the more complicated issues and process more complex claims. And we're continuing to hire more people and give our current employees more training. We're able to more quickly identify glitches in our online filing systems, notify the public of what the issues mean, and quickly get them resolved. And we're constantly looking for new tools and ways to help people, like the new Contact Us form that rolled out last night. We're also building on our communication with people seeking benefits wherever we can by sending emails that supplement or explain the federally required automated notices that get mailed, proactively reaching out to people to let them know of upcoming deadlines or other actions that might impact their claims, and hosting multilingual webinars and answering questions about the issues that are getting raised the most frequently. With yesterday's announcement of county risk level changes, we're reminded that the COVID-19 pandemic is still very much a threat to lives across the state. We know from our experience over the past year that this change in risk levels may mean layoffs across counties and across different business sectors. Business owners who need to lay off employees as a result of their county's risk level change can help us more quickly process benefits for newly laid off employees by sharing some information about the job separations as soon as possible. Employers should visit our website at unemployment.oregon.gov/employers and complete the employer reported layoffs form to give us information in bulk. Employers can find this under the quick links on the left-hand side of that main webpage. The information employers share can help us get benefits to people more quickly. For every Oregonian whose employment has been impacted by this pandemic, even if the situation has recently changed where you live, there is cause to feel hopeful. As more Oregonians get vaccinated, the state will open back up and jobs will come back. We're already seeing this. The Oregon Employment Department is here for people, not just to ensure that they get the unemployment benefits they're eligible for, but importantly to help them with the next phase of the economic recovery, reemployment. The pandemic has impacted each and every one of us, but it's impacted us differently. We know the situation is different for mothers and other caregivers, for communities of color, and for people who work in certain occupations and industries. And we're committed to helping every Oregonian who wants a job. We'll soon be doubling our efforts to support job seekers, so everyone who is looking for work, wants to explore new training opportunities, or wants to discover a new career path has the resources and the tools to do so. WorkSource Oregon offices will be offering virtual services until it's safe to reopen them to the public, and we'll soon be sharing detailed information about all of our job seeker services to everyone who is currently receiving unemployment benefits. These WorkSource Oregon offices provide all kinds of help for people looking for jobs, for training, and for careers. It's so much more than just job training. The Employment Department is a key partner, working with many local, state, and nonprofit partners, collaborating to help Oregonians through these WorkSource Oregon offices. After implementing many programming changes called for in the American Rescue Plan Act and in guidance from the U.S. Department of Labor, One new federal benefit program remains. Our goal was to start paying benefits under this mixed earner unemployment compensation, or MEUC program, by the end of April. MEUC provides an additional $100 per week for people receiving regular unemployment insurance or PEUC benefits and who had at least $5,000 in net self-employment income. Unexpected circumstances, including implementing the new American Rescue Plan program, pushed us slightly past our goal, but we hope to begin paying these benefits, including all the retroactive benefits, by May 14th. To qualify for the additional MEUC benefit, federal law does require people to submit proof of income so we can confirm their eligibility. We're finalizing the program and doing testing and expect to start accepting that documentation by May 11th. We'll soon be notifying potentially eligible claimants about the program's availability and the steps they'll need to take to get their benefits. We'll be sending emails and physical mail notices in addition to calling people, and our website will soon be updated with detailed guidance. And on our website, I'm pleased to announce the launch of our latest customer service resource, which we first introduced in an earlier version some time ago. As of last night, we've moved our online Contact Us form to a new platform. This change will allow us to respond to inquiries more efficiently and to identify where there are gaps or confusion in our communications so people are able to find the answers they need without having to wait. You can get to this new form by clicking the yellow Contact button at the top right corner of our English and Spanish websites, or by visiting oedcontactus.oregon.gov. And there are some changes to the form itself, making it more intuitive to use. Based on the information people provide in the request, they will see suggestions for FAQs that may answer their questions. After submitting a message, people will get a confirmation email letting them know that the message was received, and they'll be able to track the status of their ticket or inquiry. We'll continue responding to the inquiries that were submitted to our previous Contact Us form, and we'll address those in the order received. Response timeframes do vary depending on the particular question or situation. Some issues can be solved very quickly, while others are more complex and can take more time. If people submitted a message through the Contact Us yesterday or any time before yesterday and are still waiting for a response, they do not need to submit a new message through the new form. We're continuing to address the requests that came in through the language access email and from customers needing help in languages other than English or Spanish, and working through all of those previously submitted questions. We're continuing to have webinars, and our next one will be on school reopenings and school employees. It'll take place tomorrow at 1 p.m. With nearly 75% of Oregon's K through 12 students learning remotely, either full-time or part-time, and many Oregonians in the workforce unable to work from home and without another non-working adult present, we want to make sure that everybody understands the options available to them. We'll also explain recent federal rule changes and how they apply to school employees and to those who provide services to schools but don't work directly for them. Simultaneous interpretation will be available in Spanish, Vietnamese, Russian, and Cantonese for both webinars. And to attend the webinar or to view prior ones, people can go to unemployment.oregon.gov/webinars. I also want to share that this Friday on April 30th from 2 to 4 p.m., we'll be holding a public hearing for the unemployment insurance proposed permanent rule to protect employers' tax rates from the impact of identity theft claims. Those who wish to attend or to give public comment on the proposed rules can register for the virtual hearing by visiting oregon.gov/employ and searching for administrative rules. People that are interested should know that this hearing is not for individual claims, but for the public to submit comments on the proposed rule about those UI tax charges. Public comment on the rule will also be accepted until 5 p.m. on May 19th, and people can submit that by emailing to oed_rules@oregon.gov. To share some of the numbers, from March 15th of 2020 through April 27th of 2021, the Oregon Employment Department has paid $8.9 billion in benefits to more than 583,000 people. That represents 13.1 million weeks of benefits being paid. And we continue to pay benefits and to help a large number of people each week. Last week, paying about $123 million to 142,000 people. And in closing, I want to emphasize that we certainly know people are weary of the ongoing impact of this pandemic. After more than a year, employers are having difficulty finding workers are having difficulty supporting themselves, and COVID-19 remains in our communities across the state. I want to remind people that the Oregon Employment Department is committing to helping Oregon through these challenges. The work of this agency was founded in the midst of the greatest economic crisis of the 20th century to help Oregonians and the Oregon economy survive a crisis and then rebound in its wake. And now the Employment Department is recreating itself based on helping people through the largest economic crisis we've seen since the Great Depression. While our work to Oregonians through the crisis has been at the forefront, we've also been working diligently behind the scenes to prepare for life after the pandemic, to help people find jobs and careers, and to together rebuild Oregon's economy. And with that, I'm happy to try to answer any questions that people may have.
Thank you, David. I'm going to open up the lines to members of the media, and I'm going to call on everybody in the order you RSVP'd. Reminder, if you're joining us by phone, please make sure to hit *6 to unmute yourself. First up, we have Lindsay Nadrich with COIN. Lindsay Nadrich. Okay, next we have Peter Wong with Pamplin Media.
Hi, David. I'm not necessarily looking for numbers, but compared with last year's flood of claims, record claims in a very short period of time, are the new claims, given that obviously the number of them expired after 1 year, are they at those levels or have they decreased?
They're not at the same level. It's certainly a much smaller spike. Last year, we went from receiving maybe 3,000 to 5,000 new claims a week to almost overnight getting 70 or 80,000 new claims in a week. And we didn't see it spike that high, partially because the economy is doing better now than it was at the onset of the pandemic, partially because people are needing to file new claims as their old claims expire. And a lot of people filed claims on and off. So even if their claim expired, they may not have been unemployed at that moment, and it's not until they are again seeking benefits that they file that new claim. But that being said, we did see the number of claims that were filed in March, for example, go up by over 70% compared to what we saw in February, and that spike continued. We're still seeing very elevated levels compared to a healthy economy, but they're certainly not as high, nearly as high as they were at the onset of the pandemic.
Okay, that's kind of what I was looking for. Also, I know we've discussed this before, but I gather the president tonight, as part of the American Families Plan, has embraced the idea of using economic triggers to set benefit levels, and also some changes, probably not affecting Oregon as much, to kind of even out the floor for unemployment benefits. I just want to know what the status of, I know it's not directly related, the modernization project that the department's undertaking.
Sure. So I think kind of those changes to the unemployment insurance system are something that we're watching really closely. Oregon's kind of floor of benefits is higher than many states. So some of those changes probably wouldn't have much impact on Oregon, but some, like having a permanent expansion of benefits and benefit eligibility when economic conditions are bad, built into the law. So Oregon and every other state can build those systems ahead of time and know what they are, so we can quickly turn them on and off and not have to wait for the legislation to be passed and then for federal guidance, and then to start implementing them. We have advocated for something like that for some time, and we think that that's a really good policy move so that the safety net can help people much more quickly. In terms of our modernization program and updating the technology systems that we use to help support the unemployment insurance system, we're moving forward, and there's really two things going in parallel. One is our team continues to do all kinds of vital work, preparing to implement the new system, to have all of our employees engaged and ready to share what they've experienced during the pandemic, to shape how we construct the new system, and to be able to use it once it's completed. That work is going on at the same time that we're finalizing the contract negotiations with the vendor. And we're working through that now. It is not yet signed, but I hope that within the next couple of weeks, we hope to have that signed. And at that point, we'll be able to share more about the exact details of what that will look like, timing of when programs are expected to go live, cost, and a lot of the other details that we know people are really interested in.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Peter. Next, we have Bill Poehler with the Statesman Journal.
Yeah, hi, David. So as far as the shutdowns, I mean, we know that we're gonna see some shutdowns, and you mentioned that there could be obviously quite a few more people coming into the system depending on what happens with the shutdowns. How is the department going to make that different? Because you've obviously had a chance to learn over the last couple of times there have been shutdowns. We could say March of last year, November of last year. What has the department learned that you can apply to this now to make it more efficient so that people don't just get frustrated like they have before?
Sure, but we've learned a lot. And to be clear, there are still some challenges, and it will still be difficult for us to provide the level of service that we want to and that people expect. But we have learned a lot, and we've made a lot of improvements. Part of it, for example, the way that we're communicating information out, we think continues to improve. We have more employees that have more training even than in November. So we're able to handle the increased workflow more. We have some tools that will help us get through some of the more common issues more quickly. So for instance, particularly if there are employers that are laying off large numbers of people, if they use that form to give us that bulk information, it really streamlines the process for us to know early in the process how many people were laid off because of the shutdown. And that can really streamline the process of reviewing their claim and making sure that they get their benefits. There's also a lot more opportunities for people that have already been using the WorkShare program to reactivate that. In many cases, employers can just resume filing the WorkShare claims, and we anticipate seeing some increase of that as businesses may partially shut down to deal with the increased risk levels. So it certainly won't be easy. Our employees have been running full speed for a year, and they haven't slowed down. But we have made improvements, and we do feel like we're in a better position. And the new Contact Us form, we're hopeful, will also allow us to more efficiently answer questions when they come in, and also to help point people as they're asking us their questions to some of the resources that are online that may give them the answer right then and there as they're asking.
That's good. So is there, and I guess we really haven't had because there are federal timeliness standards that the department, wasn't meeting, especially early on. Are there timeliness standards that you guys have as far as in this situation now? Okay, we've been through this a couple times. This time we're going to try, get benefits out the door in say 3 weeks or whatever.
So the federal standards don't take economic conditions into account. So for instance, they didn't change when we went from one of the strongest economies Oregon has seen to when we had the pandemic shutdown and one of the worst economies we've seen. The federal performance standards are pretty static. Internally, we have been talking about a lot of those performance metrics, and we're certainly still aiming to try to get everyone their benefits as quickly as possible. One of the examples that I'll point to is that initial processing of claims. And to be really clear, that is not the only step that needs to happen for everyone, but that's the first step, and that nobody gets paid until that step is complete. And for many people, as soon as we do that initial processing, they do start getting their benefits. When we saw that large increase of over 70% from February to March, the amount of time that it took us to process those claims went up a little bit, but it did not go up nearly as much as it did last year. Last year, it was taking us months sometimes to go through those. And even with this increase, it really never got beyond about 2 weeks, and we're already back down to, as I said, averaging about 7 days and continuing to shorten. So I think we certainly still have the really high performance expectations for ourselves. It will be more difficult to meet them with an increase of claims, but I think we are showing that we're adapting much more quickly. And even when we get this big influx of work, we're able to handle it much more quickly and resume our forward progress much more rapidly than we have in the past.
All right, great. Thanks, David.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Phil. I'm going to go back and try Lindsay Nadrich one more time. Lindsay with Coin. Is Lindsay Nadrich with Coin on? Okay, let's go to Kate Davidson with OPB.
Hi. My question is, how many people do you know have had their PUA benefits stopped because of problems with their proof of employment documents or because the agency is still reviewing those documents?
I don't have the exact number of how many had their claims stopped. We know that there were a large number of people that had claims stopped. It was about a little over 20,000 when I looked a few days ago. And unfortunately, it was a very large percentage of those remaining claims where people hadn't sent anything in at all. So it was about 18,000 claims where we hadn't received any documentation. The remaining ones were situations where we still had documents to look through, or maybe the documents that we received weren't sufficient. We're continuing to work through those. And we do anticipate that by the end of this week, the vast majority of people whose claims were potentially going to be impacted as they filed this week, we will have reviewed all of those documents. And for any future weeks, because it's kind of a rolling time period when these impacts hit, that will be ahead of all of those other deadlines. So for instance, we have some people that first submitted their documents late last week, and we are getting through those. We're going back and looking for any documents that we may want to look at a second time to just confirm whether or not they meet the standards. And of course, we're encouraging people who have had their benefits stopped because we haven't received sufficient documentation to send that in so that we can quickly resume their payments and give them any retroactive payments if they do end up missing some weeks while we're waiting for the documentation.
I have a follow-up, but let me just make sure I understand what you just explained. So you were saying that as of a few days ago, 20,000 PUA recipients had their claims stopped. About 2,000 of those because of catching up or issues with paperwork, and about 18,000 because they hadn't yet submitted their paperwork.
And those are rough numbers. I don't have them in front of me, but that's roughly what they are. The other thing that I'll point out is we may have claims where we haven't received the paperwork and people aren't filing now, or where people submitted paperwork in case they were seeking benefits, but they may not actually be filing for benefits now. So those are the number of claims that are potentially impacted, but we don't know that all of them are necessarily filing for benefits this week.
And for that group of roughly 18,000, or it might change, who didn't submit paperwork yet, what happens to them now? Are you doing direct outreach to those specific individuals, or would they just be assessed an overpayment for what they have received so far?
So we've been doing direct outreach for quite some time, notifying people that we haven't yet received documentation, reminding them of the timeline. That, of course, is after the initial notice. Their claim can't be stopped until we've given them the federally required notice, which we've done. If we still don't have documentation, then we will issue them kind of a formal notice letting them know that because we haven't received the documentation, they're not eligible anymore for PUA benefits. And if it does result in an overpayment for prior benefits, notifying them of that as well. And people at that point have the opportunity to appeal the decision, or they can still submit the documents to us. And if they do submit it to us, we'll go back and kind of retroactively change that so that they do get the benefits and there's not an overpayment.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Kate. Next, we have Mike Rogaway with the Oregonian.
Hey, David. Last week, there were issues around suspicious activity with the PUA form. I'm curious if I realize that you're you're not in a position to describe exactly what that activity was, but do you feel you understand that issue completely now, and that's behind you?
We do believe the issue is behind us. I always hesitate to say that we understand it completely because there are always ongoing attempts to defraud the system, unfortunately, but we have a good understanding of what went on, what was going on, and we took good steps working with vendors and with our state partners to address that. So it's certainly a reminder that even when attacks don't succeed in getting a large amount of money, it can still have a really bad impact on all the people who need to get their benefits. And that's one of the reasons we're trying to stay so diligent and not take any steps that could encourage further attacks.
Good, thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Next is Keaton Thomas with K2.
Hi, David. Thanks for taking the time to chat with me and us. I guess first, just related to some of the risk categories changing, I know that this is probably something you don't have, but I'll ask anyways. Do you have any idea about, or can you anticipate the number of people who will ultimately come asking for benefits either for the first time or for the second or third or fourth time now in the coming weeks?
Well, you had a good guess that we don't really have that number. It's so hard to predict what's going to go on. I frankly wouldn't anticipate a large number of people seeking benefits for the first time, just because such a large percentage of the workforce has already unfortunately had to seek benefits at some point during this pandemic. We would not be surprised at all to see an increase of people who had been receiving benefits, had been back at work, and now need to resume benefits. It may also just be people that were working part-time and were already receiving benefits will receive a higher benefit amount now that they're not working as much if their employer has to curtail operations. But in terms of how many people might be impacted, it's incredibly hard to predict because these really aren't circumstances. Having an increase of the risk level after having been shut down by a pandemic and then reopened, it's really hard to know how that plays out across the different industries until we start to see more of the impact.
And then considering the fact that, as I and you anticipate, like a lot of people won't be filing for the first time. So if people are filing for a second or a third time, are there challenges associated with people who are coming back to seek benefits again? And if so, what are you doing to address any challenges before they might come up?
So there are some potential challenges, and one of those is the issue that we've been talking about where claims expire after a year. So for people that were receiving PUA benefits, this is not nearly the same issue. The PUA claims don't expire. If it's somebody that was on regular unemployment or PEUC, and it's been more than a year since they filed their initial claim, then they will need to file a new claim. And some of the things that we've done include putting some information on our website, including kind of a tool to help people identify whether they need to file a new claim or not. We're required to look at any earnings they've had in the meantime to see if that makes them eligible for a new claim and kind of compare what their benefit amounts would be to make sure that they're not going to lose weekly benefits as a result of which claim they go on. And then we also have to look at if they had a period of employment and then became unemployed again, there may be issues that we need to adjudicate. The adjudication process is going vastly quicker than it was a year ago or even in November. And with the recent influx of new claims that we saw, we've streamlined some of those processes through automation and just the way our employees have found ways to handle those more quickly. So we do anticipate that we'll be able to review those newly filed claims pretty quickly.
Thank you.
Thanks, Keaton. Next is Tom Cusack with Oregon Housing Blog.
Hey, David, I have a question about regular insurance and specifically about the weekly benefit amounts. I was able to dig out from Department of Labor data, some data that shows in the last quarter, about 26% of the people who had their eligibility determined were at the maximum rate. But I really don't have any way of getting at a number of the percentage of claimants who are at the minimum rate. Is there any information out there that shows the distribution of benefits along that curve between the minimum and the maximum?
I'll have to look. I know that there's a lot of data that we give to the U.S. Department of Labor and that's publicly available. I don't know if it shows that benefit amount distribution though, but we'll certainly look and see if we either have existing public-facing information or if there's other information that is readily available.
My second question kind of is a follow-up on the PUA questions that were asked earlier. The national report will come out tomorrow. There's no reason for us to think there's going to be a big drop-off in PUA claims for Oregon because of this snafu that was discussed earlier, is there?
And I want to make sure I know what you're talking about in terms of the snafu. I think you're referring to the issues with the weekly filings last week.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We don't anticipate that. There was that challenge where people trying to file saw some issues, but they were addressed pretty quickly. And even though people may not have originally received a confirmation email, the weekly claims and the new claims that they submitted were processed. So I don't want to minimize the inconvenience that I know many people face, but it did not prevent people from being able to submit their claims. So we don't anticipate that that would have a significant impact.
All right, thanks. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Tom. Next is Anthony Carter with KOBI. Anthony Carter with KOBI. Okay, let's move on to Dick Hughes with the Hughesisms. Dick Hughes with the Hughesisms online.
I'm sorry, I unmuted myself and then immediately muted myself. I have a question about PUA. I was talking to a guy last week who was confused because his PUA, his weekly form check-in, when he was checking to see how much he had left and stuff, said like X number of weeks remaining, 11 or 12, I don't remember. But then saying that the eligibility, if that's the right word, extended until September, early September. So do PUA claims expire, and how do we explain to claimants what these different indicators on their weekly status reports mean?
So it's changed over time. PUA claims do expire, but right now they expire when the statutory deadline set by federal law is reached, and that's, I believe, September 4th of this year. And because of the number of weeks that were added to people, people should not run out of weekly PUA benefit eligibility prior to September 4th. So with regular unemployment, we talk both about it being a claim generally lasting for a year and the dollars or number of weeks of benefits that they can receive. And sometimes people will use up all of those benefits before reaching the year. That's not the case currently with the PUA program. It has been challenging to keep the notifications that people see when they look at the online claim system accurately reflecting that for a couple of reasons. One is that, of course, the PUA program is completely new and doesn't operate the same as the regular unemployment insurance program. And it's that regular program that those notifications and the status indicators were built around. The other challenge has been updating it as the different iterations of PUA have been extended. So there was the original version, there was an extension, and how many weeks people got kind of depended on when they stopped claiming. And then the newest version that took a different approach and extended it. So there are, we do have some information out there, and we're continuing to look at how we can clarify that. Some of the improvements that we've made is that originally it was really showing the dollar amounts, and we're now trying to focus on showing people the number of weeks based on how the PUA program works. That's not normally what our status system does, but we do have some public-facing information, and we're certainly continuing to look at how we might be able to make that more clear in what can be a pretty complex and changing set of programs.